Hey, Emma.
Hey.
Dude, it's time to record the podcast.
Oh, I'm just not in that place right now. I'm sorry.
Oh, really? Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, but do you want to hear what movie we're going to talk about?
It's just because, nobody gets me, so I don't really want to, I don't really feel that vibe. Nobody's on my level with this, so yeah, I'm just not feeling it. I'm just really emotional right now.
Sure. Totally. I mean, the movie is Twilight.
What? Wait. Twilight? I love that movie.
Yeah.
Does this mean we're in the 2000s now?
We're in the year 2000.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Oh my god. Okay, I have so many things to say. Okay, no, right. Let me tell you all my theories about Team Edward and Harry Potter and oh my god, I'm so excited.
Hello and welcome to Plot Twisters.
This is a podcast where we take movies and twist the plot to see if we can make them better, and if not, moodier.
At the moment, we're talking about teen movies from the noughties.
On this episode, Twilight from 2008.
I'm Anders, and I don't want to know what the square root of pi is.
I'm Emma, and I like watching you sleep.
Really?
No.
No.
No, watching people sleep is not okay. Anders,
Hello?
guess what?
Chicken butt.
We're in the 2000s.
In the year 2000. In the year 2000. That's a quote from the 90s.
No, we can't do that anymore. The 90s is over. Move on, old man.
Tell me about it. Oh man. All right, it feels good. Here we are.
We're on my turf now. I feel at home. I feel comfortable. We're going to talk all about all of my movies. Let's just give everyone should we just give them a little teaser, a little taster of what we've got coming up?
Flip, yeah, let's do it.
So today we're obviously talking about Twilight. Finally. We will be soon talking about Mean Girls, Final Destination. We've got the wonderful Christmas film Just Friends, a British film, Angus Thongs and Perfect Snogging, which you're going to really enjoy, I feel like. We've got Jennifer's Body. We will be talking about a Harry Potter film. The Princess Diaries, an absolute classic. Freaky Friday, and so quite a lot of Lindsay Lohan coming up. One of my all-time favourites, 17 Again, and the absolutely brilliant film, which you're going to love, She's the Man. Those are some of the films we have coming up, and I'm so excited.
I can't wait. I'm going to be honest with you. I've not even heard of some of those movies, and I've seen none of them.
That's just so good. How have we figured this out so well that we both have this big gap in our knowledge?
It's so weird to me. It's so weird to me that I can go from knowing every movie from a genre of a decade to just, I don't know what I was doing in the 2000s. Right?
Yeah.
I wasn't watching movies, apparently.
No, you just stopped.
Well, I wasn't watching teen movies. I think I was watching rom-coms. I think I graduated to adult coms.
Yeah, I mean, rom-coms was kind of the starring thing. Like, teen movies, it were big in the 90s, and then it turned into rom-coms, so definitely. But I was still there, 10 years behind, slowly making my way through some absolute classics. Now, I need to give quite a few caveats before we start talking about the movie Twilight, if that's okay.
Let's do it.
All right.
Give us the rules that we need to play by.
So, obviously, if you listen to some of our previous episodes, you'll know that the general vibe is that Anders watched a lot of movies in the 90s and, liked them a lot. And that was these are fun movies that I'll watch again. I would say probably the one that you come close to being quite a hardcore fan of is Back to the Future from the 80s.
Truth. Preach.
But I wouldn't say that we have quite reached the level of personality defining media that we're going to be exploring in this season, because teenage me was like a sponge slowly soaking up all these elements of something kind of new, which we've obviously been talking about teen movies, but we're kind of now going into young adult territory or YA territory, which is a different thing.
Sure.
Because
sure.
young adult genre is usually a lot more intense. It's written for teens and young adults. It's often fantasy. It's often, I guess, a bit more serious. But we also have this new exciting thing, which we haven't really hugely met before, which is franchises. I guess we met it before with Scream, which is a yeah. But Back to the Future, I would say, is like a trilogy franchise, but this is like a mega media behemoth. Twilight. There were 4 books. There were 5 films.
Yeah.
There were spin-off books. There was extra content. There was merchandise. This was an absolute juggernaut of media content.
Yeah.
So when I talk about this film, I'm not really necessarily just talking about it on its own. I'm talking about it as a huge, all-encompassing experience that dominated my teenage years. I feel like I'm now at a point where I can talk about it a bit more objectively. But I think that's a useful caveat to have. So the other caveat is that, like I said, this is one of 4. Twilight is the first of 4 books, and this is the first of 5 films. And it is, because I'm so familiar with the whole thing, it's a bit difficult to judge it just on its own, but I will try my best. But I might also fill in little extra bits about what comes next if needed. So that's the other one. And also, this is a really interesting one because I, like many other people, many other people, it's a really common thing, was obsessed with this film and then had a complete 180. Twilight is the worst thing ever. It's really stupid. When I was in my early 20s. Yeah, it was embarrassing that I liked it. I was shamed for liking it. I shamed myself for liking it. I shamed other people for liking it. It became like this massive backlash. And then it's now kind of circled back around. So, often content that's aimed at teenage girls is sort of written off as being silly and looked down upon. So, I think that was a big part of it. There's lots of sexism associated with liking these films and these stories. So it's kind of come back around for a lot of people who now appreciate it in a very different way. So there's a huge journey with this film and these stories that, we obviously won't be able to do justice, but it's very exciting for me to be able to hear your totally fresh perspective, and we will, we couldn't be coming from 2 more vastly different perspectives on this. So I think it's worth just saying that for our listeners so they can get a kind of sense of understanding of where we're coming from. I'm really excited. Well, let's get stuck in. Let's stick our teeth in.
Let's do it.
Let me give you a short recap.
Get those fangs in there.
I'm sure many of you will be familiar with this because it's very, very popular, very well known. I just imagine there are people who are listening to this episode who either they know the movie so well they don't need a recap like you, or they might be like me and they've never seen this movie. Not a clue. Yeah.
Right? It has to be two. It's those 2. I don't think there's anyone out there that's just been like, I think I probably saw it one time.
I don't know really. Polarizing. It's strong opinions, strong love or hate. Yeah. So the story revolves around our main character, Bella Swan, who is, I think, 17 at the start of the movie. And she is moving away from her mum, who she used to live with in Phoenix, Arizona. Her mum and dad are separated, and her dad lives in Forks, Washington, which is, we will be told at the start of the film, the rainiest place in America. And fun fact for you that I happen to know is that when Stephanie Meyer, who wrote the book, was writing this book, she literally just Googled rainiest place in America. Forks, Washington came up. So that's where she picked them for the setting of the film. So Bella moves to this new town, which is very, very different from where she's come from. She leaves her mum and she goes to live with her dad, who she doesn't know very well, Charlie. Now, the very kind of immediate impression we get of this place is that it's quite a small town. Everyone seems to know each other, apart from this very mysterious family, the Cullens. We are introduced to them in the classic high school setting. The kind of, I guess you could say, like the normal kids are all very friendly and nice, fairly generic, but they talk about this family, the Cullens, and how weird they are. We know that the kind of doctor of the town is the father, Carlisle Cullen, who, along with his wife Renee, has adopted a bunch of kids who all seem to be quite mysterious, quite mature. They're all very pale. We have and some of them are in relationships as well. So we have Rosalie and Emmett with each other. Yeah, Rosalie and Emmett are in a relationship. Then we have Jasper and Alice, who are an item, and then on his own is Edward Cullen, played by Robert Pattinson. And there's this fabulous scene where they all walk into the dining room and there's music plays and it's all very intense. It becomes very clear to start with that Edward doesn't seem to like Bella. At least he looks like he's kind of very uncomfortable when she's around. He kind of is quite rude to her and eventually disappears. Bella is adjusting to life in Forks. She meets her dad's friend who is from the Culiat tribe nearby, and his son, Jacob Black. And they, kind of try to settle in a little bit. Eventually, Edward seems to come back and he seems very different. He's much more cheerful. Also, his eyes have changed colour. They were originally black and they're now sort of golden. And he takes a more of an interest in Bella. And this progresses, but he still seems to be somewhat pained by this relationship somehow. And eventually through some hints from Jacob, from some signs from Edward himself, but also through Googling it, Bella eventually... Which is
new, by the way. That's not been a thing.
She just Googled it.
The movies.
Bella figures out that there's a very specific reason why Edward and the other Cullens behave so weird, which is because they are what?
Vampires.
Now, there are some very specific rules to these vampires. Edward and his family don't eat people. They don't drink human blood. They've all decided not to, and they call themselves vegetarians, and they just drink blood of animals, which is why they have the golden eyes instead of the red ones. They don't sleep. They don't eat. They sparkle in the sun. So if they go out in the sun, their skin sparkles. They don't age. They don't die unless they're killed specifically. So all of them are very old. Edward himself is 108, I happen to know. And they move from town to town until it becomes suspicious, and then they move on. So those are the vampire rules. And essentially him and Bella fall in love. But it's very difficult because he's a vampire and he wants to drink her blood. There's also this very specific element to this, which I don't think they explain well enough in the film, but which is that Bella specifically, her blood appeals to Edward far more than anyone else's. Much like how you might have a kind of, very specific craving for a specific food or something. It's meant to be that she particularly is.
So her blood is effectively Cool Ranch Doritos.
Exactly.
if you will.
Exactly.
You just want to. They can't resist them.
Yeah, and
those tasty boys.
So for him, it's very difficult to resist, but they pursue a relationship anyway. It's very passionate. It's very moody. It's teen girl cocaine, literally. Eventually, it escalates towards this moment where we discover that some other vampires have been in the area and they've been attacking people, because these aren't vegetarian vampires; these are meat-eating vampires. And they realise that the Cullens are harbouring this human, who the other Cullens have all decided to accept, and they decide to go after her. One of them is a tracker called James, who particularly is very excited by the principle of a human who's being protected by vampires, and the challenge of that hunt engages him, and he decides to pursue her. So the kind of final bit is a showdown between this vampire and Edward and all the other vampires, and Edward has to try and save her when she's bleeding to death and has been bitten. So he has to suck out the venom and then try and save her, which he chooses to do because he doesn't want her to turn into a vampire, because again, in Edward's eyes, being a vampire is evil, and he doesn't want to be one. He doesn't want anyone else to be one. He cares about Bella, so he tries to not turn her. They then decide to kind of figure things out at the end. But in the next film, everything gets a little bit more complicated. But that's where we'll leave it for now.
Ooh.
Now, I've already made it really, really clear to everyone what I think about this. I loved it. I read all the books multiple times. All of my copies are dog-eared. I watched the film many times. I could recite the film off the back of my hand. Like I said, I went through a big period where I was very against it and denied it. And I've now come back to this place where I can appreciate it for what it is. It's a very low-budget film, which is kind of cool but kind of interesting. There's a lot of cliches in there. Some of it's aged badly. But I will always love this film because of the part it played in my life. Now, over to a man who has never seen it before yesterday. Had no idea what it was even about. Doesn't really like vampire movies and hadn't seen many vampire movies.
Yep.
And didn't watch any movies in the 2000s. Anders, what did you think?
Da 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 da. Look, I feel a lot of pressure in this situation.
Don't feel pressure. Don't feel pressure. I feel good because I've said my piece. I've said what I need to say, and now everything is it's all open for you.
Fine.
Take it home.
All right. I feel the pressure, and it's not necessarily just from your own,
it's not from me sitting here wearing an I Heart Twilight t-shirt.
Yeah, exactly. You put on your ashen makeup to look just like a glimmering Robert Pattinson in this movie. I feel the pressure because I'm not I will always align with the ethos of this podcast, which is you like what you like. We don't yuck other people's yums, We're here for a good time. We're here to acknowledge what we like, and it's cool if you don't like it, but it's not about oh, this is good, and if you don't like it, what's wrong with you or whatever. I also don't do that thing as much as I used to, which is when people are like, oh yeah, that movie, never seen it. And I don't go, you've not seen that movie? What's wrong with you? Because I know that time is precious and we can't consume all the media we want to consume.
Yeah.
But my experience with this movie is I have, for whatever reason, it's been 50% blind spot and 50% acknowledgement. Oh, I don't want to see those movies.
Yeah.
I don't want to read those books. I remember being old enough to think I'm too old for those movies. And I think that's tough because, as we know, when you get older at a certain point, you realize that you're you can watch whatever you want, and it's not but I just remember being like a person in my 20s going, well, I can't watch those movies for teenage girls, so I have to acknowledge that I've had an inbuilt bias without any research. Okay,
and it's not like something like Harry Potter, which is a bit more marketed to be a bit more accessible and for everyone. This is very heavily and always has been. This is for teenage girls. Correct.
And side note, Harry Potter, because it came out a little bit earlier or whatever, I read all those books when I was growing up, so I watched all those movies, and I know what it's like to read a book and love it, and then watch a movie and love that. Okay?
Yeah.
So I say all that to say, I understand why people have such a deep-rooted and formative relationship with this movie and the books, these movies, the books, and all that. Okay? Having said that...
Yeah.
It's not for me.
Okay.
Okay. This movie was not
it's
for me.
fine.
Okay.
It's fine. Yeah.
And okay. Let me tell you all the things that I think are great. Numero uno. All right. I can't deny this the sex appeal of a certain ashen vampire with golden eyes. Right?
Oh my gosh.
I understand. Look at it.
I had a
Google
big
him right
poster
now.
of his
Everybody,
face
hey,
on my window, on my wall when I was growing up.
Using the power of Google, I would love you just to Google Robert Pattinson Twilight. Okay? He's a good-looking guy. Right? With this hair that defies gravity, kind of goes up and just keeps going. He's got that kind of hair that dudes like that are like,
tussle it.
He's very, and I just jealousy and rage, I liked that the whole movie was in a certain color palette, and I know it's and that was cool. It really set that vibe. So I really liked that. I know it was low budget, but I don't know, I kind of liked the cheesy, graphics of when they were bouncing around like spider monkeys in the trees and stuff, I thought that was fine. All right. And all of that, pretty darn good. However, and this is going to sound really petty, okay? And I'm not read anything about these movies, so I might be tapping into my own thing, or I might be tapping into what everybody said about this movie, but I don't know, and I'm not going to Google it, right? Their whole deal, the whole like rules about vampires in this movie, really upsets me. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, you go in the sunshine, you're not going to die. You just glow like a damn god. Okay. What? Vampires have to avoid the sun. That's the whole thing of vampires. They avoid the sun, and you kill them with a stake through the heart. And the fact that for whatever reason, the person who wrote this book, I assume was in the book as well, decided instead of that, they live in a gray, dark place, but if they get in the sun, it's fine. I really, really, really didn't like that. Right, people?
Yeah, I guess I will say that at least it does make it feel very different than a lot of other vampire stories because of the fact that they are completely free to go wherever. And in the later stories, they do that. Like, they go around a lot more and they meet up with other vampires and stuff. So I think that's the benefit of doing that they don't die in the sun. However, I do agree with you. It does feel, and yes, this has always felt to me like the writer has basically just gone, what's the sexiest possible thing I can do? What will appeal to teenage girls the most? And I'm going to make that a rule somehow.
I don't know, like, and that's fine. Like, it's not like, first of all, spoiler alert, from what I understand, at least my worldview, I'm pretty sure vampires aren't real. Okay.
Well,
so you could do what, you can do whatever you want. If I'm wrong, come and suck my blood. But don't do that, please, actually, because.
Wait, what's that behind you?
Don't even start, okay?
Guy with the sharp teeth is behind you.
You know I don't like scary movies. You know I don't like talking about that. So this is the thing I didn't like, and it really stuck with me. And the only thing, I just want to say one more thing, okay, and I'm going to move it on. What's his name? Edward? Is that the sexy man?
Edward Cullen, right? Yeah.
He is as sexy as he is a dum-dum.
Okay.
And like, hey, dude, you've been going to high school for 100 years, right? What?
You still don't get it.
You still don't get it?
Tell me about World War One more time.
I don't understand. Like, why do you have to pretend to go to high school? Just go live in the woods somewhere, people. Or just travel. Just travel the world and see stuff. They box themselves into this weird corner, and I don't get that. And I said that was the last thing, but I want to say one more thing, which was, whilst it was cool and retro and a little bit sexy, that whole scene when they're like, let's all go play baseball in old-timey outfits, and then we all get attacked by other vampires, it just seemed so weird to me that they were like, now you're part of the family. Should we all go do that thing where we play 1920s style League of Their Own baseball with the old-timey floppy hats?
Yes.
That scene really was just weird to me, and I didn't get it. But again, I get why people like this movie. I understand it. If I was a 14-year-old girl and I was watching this movie, I think I would think it was the best thing ever. This movie for you. This was my so-called life.
Okay. Yeah.
Or whatever, right? A movie, it was a TV show, but like, I get what it's like to be a teenager and feeling so attached to something and knowing full well that other people may not understand why it speaks to you so much. So I get it. I just wish that the vampires would die in the sun.
Yeah. I mean, there is some, not to just defend it, but there is a sense of stakes. Excuse the pun. With going out.
Which there were also no stakes in this movie, by the way, as far as I can remember.
So it turns. So in the later, again, I appreciate that you can't use. You have to judge the film on its own. So yes, we're judging the film on its own. However, in one of the later films, it's clear that if you go out in the sun and you expose vampires to humans, essentially the vampire police are going to come and get you, because there is police. So there's like an ancient society of vampires who protect the anonymity and the secret of vampires. So if you expose yourself in any way, or you tell humans that vampires are real, they'll come and kill you. And that's part of the reason why Bella being a human and being protected, and Edward telling her, is such a big deal, because he's risking his and his family lives, which is why you
Right.
know, Rosalie, when she gets very upset when she drops the salad bowl, she's like, this isn't safe for any of us. What that means is, you told a human we're gonna die. What are you doing?
Yeah. What the hell's wrong with you?
Yeah. So I guess that's my slight justification. But again, that doesn't feature in this movie. So, I have so much to say about this film. I want to let you talk, but I also have so much to say. So it's really like it's difficult what the balance is.
It's all good. It's all good. This is a celebration of a movie that's very important. What are the other things that What are the other things that people need to know about this movie, or whatever, or that you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, I guess what the really key thing that I want to say, like in regards to this movie, is I want to help other women, particularly who are a similar age to me, or even not a similar age, kind of feel seen in the like I said, there was this big movement against Twilight and associated works, similar things that happens when you are a teenage girl who really liked a thing. And so we know it happened with the Beatles, right? So the primary audience for the Beatles originally was teenage girls, and they were looked down upon as a result of it. But now obviously that's not a thing anymore. They're seen as, the best band in history. So there's this kind of thing that happens. I think Taylor Swift is another great example of this, that she had this teenage female fan base, and was then seen as less credible than other artists because of it. And I think Twilight is just a really such a big thing for this. I remember there's so many occasions that I can think of in which I remember talking about this story and enjoying it, and then hearing a negative response or hearing some kind of like degradation because of it, until I eventually started saying, oh my god, can you believe I see it like that? That's so embarrassing, and wow, wasn't I so cringe?
That's really that sucks.
Yeah.
Pun intended.
Whereas another thing that I've always liked, so I've always liked Batman. I've always been a huge Batman fan, and I used to read the comics. It's one of my favorite things ever. Right. The Dark Knight is my favorite movie, which came out the same year as this, by the way. I've never been criticized for liking that.
Are you saying it because are you saying that it like stuff that only women like gets put down, and if men like it, then it's not put down? Is that a thing? Is that an established
100%,
thing?
100%, yeah.
Oh,
so
stupid.
Like these two movies came out the same year. 2008, big year for me, by the way, because the first Lady Gaga album came out that year as well. Yeah. Big year for me. And so so The Dark Knight and Twilight both came out the same year. I have often people seem to go, oh yeah, that's cool that you like Batman, or oh, that's so lame that you like Twilight, right? But it's like the difference is, I mean, obviously The Dark Knight is a much better film, but I think that there is this sexist undercurrent to if teenage girls like it, then it's not cool, and that sucks.
Is that still a thing?
Yeah,
you think?
100%. Yeah. Harry Styles is currently fighting against it. He's not fighting.
He's on the turn. He's on the turn.
He is very actively embracing having a teenage female fan base, and in doing so, everyone else likes him as well. So he's kind of winning against this terrible thing.
Can I tell you? Maybe I'm proving this for you. Like, so another thing that I have as an adult, definitely avoided thinking that's not for me, is the band One Direction. Okay?
Yep.
I cannot name for you one single One Direction song. If I heard it, I don't know if I could identify it in a musical lineup, unless Harry Styles was the singer of One Direction, and then I could probably figure it out, but he was like a younger guy. But I found recently, probably within the last 5 months of my life, hearing different songs that I kept going, oh, that's a nice song. Ooh, that's a good song. And it turned out all of them were Harry Styles songs. Okay? And as a result, in a blind listen test or whatever, I identified that I am a fan of this gentleman, Harold Stylish. And as subsequently, I will tell you that the album Harry's House is probably the album I've listened to the most over the last few months. But if you told me 5 months ago, hey, listen to this guy, he's the guy from One Direction, I would have told you.
I think I did.
You probably did. All right, you don't have to, yes, very much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. But you're my young friend who tells me about young people things. But up until a certain point, I would have said, no, because that's for like little kids.
I think, One Direction, also popular around a similar time, is great.
But I never associated that with young women. I've just associated it with young people. Okay,
Yeah.
so for me, it's an ageist thing, not a sexist thing.
Yeah, or if it is, it's not coming from you. It's coming from society. That this is not a thing. This is not a thing for you. You wouldn't have been marketed it. It's not, the color palette isn't designed for you. The style of music isn't designed for you. It's all designed for a specific thing. I mean, he's got the copy of Harry's House. It's so good, isn't it?
It's amazing.
So I was never a big One Direction fan, but I knew someone who was, so I kind of learned a lot, picked up a lot about them as a result. And also I just love fan culture stuff. I find it very interesting. And so there's one song in particular called Little Things by One Direction. I'd be interested for you to listen to it and see what you think, because I think that song, that's one of my favorite ones that they did, but it's not a pop song, it's like a ballad. And you also get Harry's great vocals showcased really well as well. Like, you can tell that he's like such a wonderful singer. But yeah, that song for me, I think, was the one that I was like, it's stylistically directed towards an older audience, but the lyrics are for teenage girls. So yeah, it's an interesting one. But I think like, that the late noughties and the early 2010s, fan culture blew up. There was this thing called Super Hulock on Tumblr, which is where I was a lot of the time.
What is that? I've never even heard that.
Super Hulock is the TV show Supernatural, Doctor Who, and Sherlock. You know, the BBC Sherlock series.
I like Sherlock. Sherlock was great.
So Super Hulock fans were people who were obsessed with these three shows, Supernatural, Doctor Who, and Sherlock. And it was like a thing if you were a Super Hulock fan. Twilight fandom was a huge thing. Harry Potter fandom was a huge thing. So, you know, there's this massive surge of internet fan culture that really drove a lot of internet usage and commentary and that kind of thing at the time, but was all very much looked down on. But I mean, another reason why I think film like Twilight and like I said, other films like it, like other properties like Harry Potter, have such an emotional place for me, because that was the way I connected to other people for a long time.
Right.
Like particularly on the internet, you know, because when I was in my late teens, early 20s, I was very, very lonely and didn't have a lot of friends, didn't have a lot of activities that I regularly did with other people. But I love movies and I love TV, as I do now. So the way I got out into the world was to connect with people on the internet via this stuff, and to talk about it and talk how much I loved it, and to, you know, read stories about it, like fan fiction, which is so commonly looked down on, so commonly shamed.
Yeah. In
so many ways, it's such a wonderful community, and it's so creative, and people discuss it and talk about it all the time. And so, you know, yeah, this culture of shaming around a lot of this stuff really grinds my gears, because I was a victim of it, and because I see how difficult that is for a lot of people, and how, you know, and why I think this thing that we have in this podcast is so much an important part of my identity, which is that you shouldn't shame people for the things that you like, is because for a long time this sort of thing was the only thing I had. And then I went to university and I met people from the real world, and they shamed me for it. And I was like, well, that's all I've got. So you're just shaming me for this thing that I like, because you don't get it, because it's not for you. And who cares if it's rubbish? You know, who cares?
Why don't people just say, oh, that's cool, you like that? I don't like that.
Yeah,
but that's cool.
Because young people are inexperienced and they don't understand.
We've talked about this before, and I just have to say, like, I am not, I am in many ways very grateful that I grew up just before this kind of stuff was a thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, like, you're talking about, like, fan internet stuff. I was never a part of any, like, by the time we could get online regularly, I was already, like, in my teens. And that was, like, basic. I've never been in a forum where I've, like, found people who all like the same thing. We all talk about it. When I was in high school, it was like, it's not on the internet. It's in real life. Your friends like the same things or you don't, and that's it. But nobody knew what the things that, but for the most part, people wouldn't know the things that you like, which is why I could, nobody knew that I was watching all these teen movies in the 90s, like going home and watching 10 Things I Hate About You on repeat, or, in all those movies. It would have been cool to have a group to go like, guys, isn't the Neverman Kiss pretty great, But I didn't have that. So I never got to share the things that I liked in that way, but I was also never like judged for the things that I liked. I wouldn't bring it up in the lunchroom for fear of the bullies, but like I think I'm sorry that was the case for you and other people. It was, dang, the 90s were a lot simpler. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
really
it feels like it's one of the big differences between like elder millennials and younger millennials, I guess, is this shift. And it's a shift not only in how you connect and socialize and stuff, but it was also this very interesting shift in the way that media was created, because a lot of the films we talked about in the 80s and 90s are standalone stories. Sometimes they had a sequel, but they're usually standalone stories. They're not developed, not super developed worlds, or they're set in the real world. I mean, think how many stories that we have talked about are just set in the real world.
Almost all of them.
Pretty much all of them, right? When this shift in the late noughties kind of began, it turned things much more towards world building. And, something like Twilight, something like The Hunger Games, something like Harry Potter, the Marvel universe, it's cinematic universes, and it gives the viewer or the fan a kind of wealth of knowledge to tap into. They can learn all about it. I can still tell you so much about the Twilight universe because I've, studied it like it was my job when I was younger. And this kind of place to escape into that you could discuss, and there was more content, you could get deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper with it, have this deeper understanding. And that just isn't a thing in so many of the teen films that we've talked about from the 90s, right? There's no extra layer, there's no world building, there's no universe, there's no lore to it. But we are now in a situation, and I think, again, partly because of films like this, but also things like Game of Thrones, where it is the thing to have these massive epic stories where you can, I guess actually the Lord of the Rings trilogy is another really important one, but where you can learn everything about it and you can read all the accompanying stories, and all of those things have come later and have, it's turned storytelling into giant franchises. Like, think how many products there are related to Star Wars, like Disney series, films, books, all of this stuff, which is all in one place, so that you can almost pick a place and say, I want to go there very often. And I think the reason that has happened is a very similar reason to the reason why I would go on all these fan sites and talk about this. I think it's because people are much less happy than they were in the 90s, generally. People are lots more scared about the world. People are scared about the environment. People are scared about the economy. And if you have this other magical world you can escape into, and you can go there and you can feel like, oh, it's sparkly vampires and it's magical wizards, and that makes you feel better. This film made me feel better. These stories made me feel better and made me feel understood and made me feel connected with other people. And they provided a really essential service that I just don't think teenagers needed in the same way in the 80s and 90s. And I think this is why this is such a good film to start this season with, because it's such a strong indicator of that weird shift that happened. I feel quite emotional talking about this. I wasn't expecting that.
I think you probably hit the nail on the head. There was such a think about the difference between 1999 and 2001.
Yeah.
And onwards, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
The 90s, it was all upwards, but we were all scared of Y2K, but it turned out it was fine. Boom, 2000s, 9/11, war, tons of bad stuff.
Recession.
Yeah. Okay. The internet and the rise of cyberbullying and stuff. Cool. Well, I look forward to not just, obviously, hey, listen, you know what I was thinking? Maybe we should, as an exercise, revisit as we get farther in the season. This is a big commitment on my part, so I might regret this, but maybe we should watch the other Twilight movies, and then we should have another episode where we talk about the whole thing. Because I'm keen to see. I was all geared up to see this werewolf, Which,
you were so waiting for the hot werewolf, and you didn't really get him. So
I got no hot werewolf. I got a little bit, right? I still think that vampires are sexier than wolves, but I didn't get the fullness of it because it's like I get it. It's a bit like saying you watched what, like one of the Iron Man movies. That doesn't mean you've understood the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is another thing that I'd never watched until like a year ago. I'd never seen any of the Marvel movies, and I always avoided them because I assumed that they wouldn't be a good fit for me. And this is the thing. You should. I'm learning more as I age and mature, that I should accept more and be more open to things, because I was conditioned in the 90s that you either like a thing or you can't like a thing, but don't tell anybody. But now I think it's more like I have the capacity to like a lot more things than I've discovered yet. I love discovering things that are new that I love, and especially if they're things that have been around for a while. I remember we talked about the Beatles earlier or whatever. I remember discovering John Lennon's solo stuff for the first time ever, and that was like in the early 2000s or something, and I was like, he had stuff that wasn't this is so good, why didn't anybody tell me about this? And I think the answer to that question is, why didn't anybody tell me about this, is you got to get out there, girl. You can't just wait for somebody to tell you about everything.
Yep. Yeah.
You must be a sponge and soak up the goodness of this world and this life we live. So I'll watch the other Twilight movies if you want.
Hell yeah, we can do a whole day marathon. That'd be incredible. I also have I was thinking, I have so much trivia, so many facts in my head about these stories that I was thinking about sharing, but I was kind of like, maybe we can do that in the next, if we do it, come revisit it. But I was like, I think the thing I really wanted to kind of communicate is to like, to stand up for the teenage girl viewer and to say, like, if you like this, that's great and that's cool, and you need to embrace the things that you like, and that makes you a more interesting person, and it makes you a more exciting person, and the better that you broadcast your interests, the more likely you are to connect with people who have those things in common with you, and the more genuine you can be about that means that your friendships will be more fulfilling and more satisfying. And I think like the way that this film plays into the story of the world and of culture and of media, and the way that these stories play in, is one that was so divisive, but at the same time so influential, because this was the first proper franchise I think there was like the arguably like Alien and that kind of stuff came before that, but a lot in the horror genre. But in this was the first blockbuster mainstream franchise that was led by a woman, by a female character, which then caused a series of other franchises to do the same. Like the Hunger Games was another really important one, and you can even track the way that has changed things over time. There was eventually then this thing of Black Widow not getting her own superhero story, being the only Avenger without one, and then she eventually got it later, but it was set in, it's almost like they tried to retcon that they'd not done that, because as much as we like to think, we watch a lot of media which does show good gender diversity, and we see now that there is so much more representation, but it's so recent still that this franchise was seen as a non-starter, because people didn't think that anyone would want to watch a female-led franchise. And so this film had a huge and its ridiculous success had a huge impact on the way that cinema is now made. We now get to see other stories and other franchises because of this story. So that was, I mean, I kept joking about it being emotional, and then I kind of actually have felt a bit emotional about it. But it's important, and I wanted to say it, so I've said it, and there we go. We can go be silly now.
Love it. Cool. Yeah, let's go be silly. That was good. Let's go be silly.
Let's go be silly.
Oh, God.
Do you want to know the truth behind the supernatural? What's really being hidden from you?
Look, I don't believe in magic or nothing, but I know what I saw and I know it was evil.
You know what it's really for, don't you? Communing with the devil.
Raised by the fires of hell, Father said.
The answers lie with the Department for Unexplained Minor Phenomena,
Welcome to the dump. Back at the dump. Welcome back to the dump.
whose field recordings we have now made available wherever you get your podcasts. No, seriously, it's like we discovered the X-Files, but like on a server on LinkedIn or something.
I think you need to kind of take the lead on this one.
Why?
Because I don't know if I can be objective enough. What do you want to change? You want to change the vampires? It's the same, but they don't sparkle.
It's the same, but they're like mood rings, and so the warmer it is, the different, like their skin changes color, you know what I mean? To like red and blue and stuff. I think that it would be really fun to focus in on the history of this family and all of their travels and all the different towns they've lived in, because that's a really sad story. The thing that is constant in vampire movies and was in this one, which is just like with Keith Sutherland, people don't really want to be vampires, you know? Like, they're always pretty sad in my experience of watching vampire movies. Do you remember like Interview with the Vampire? Did you ever see that?
Yeah.
It had all the like hunks of the 90s in it, you know? Kirsten Dunst is as a young vampire is in this movie, you know? And I just remember that one and other vampire movies, just walking away from it going like, oh, it's really sad that they ended up being vampires and they didn't want to be vampires. And in my experience with vampire movies, you either, too bad you're a vampire forever, or they somehow kill the head vampire and then great news, you're out of the vampire club, you know? But I so like that was another thing that was missing from this movie. Is there a head vampire? And what if like Robert Pattinson was like, I love you, Bella, and I want to be with you, monkey girl, you know?
Spider monkey. Yep.
Spider monkey. But like real quick, I'm also on the side trying to kill the head vampire, you know, so that it's no longer a thing. Cause didn't Bella kind of want to be a vampire? Is that the vibe?
Oh yeah, she was super into it from day one.
Okay, all right. This is what I want. I want her to go to the extreme where she's like actively trying to trick people into biting her, and she's like, you know, that she like runs in after like a fun game of baseball with the family and they're all laughing, and she like pretends to faint and sort of falls.
She like puts a bit of jam on her thing. She's like, look, try this. Just lick it. Just see what happens. Just try it.
Yeah, exactly. Hey guys, I know you don't like eating food or whatever, but I made you all smoothies. And they're my blood, you know? kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that, you know, that could be fun. That could be fun. No, I just want the vampires to be able to die when the sun comes out, you know? What if, for example, they're in the wettest place in the world, in America, but then everybody finds out they're vampires, so they have to move, and the only place they haven't lived yet is
Phoenix,
Arizona. Yeah, exactly. The sunniest place in America. And they have to move there, but then, so they move into Bella's mom's house, which is fun because he's a baseball player, the dad, right? The stepdad.
Yeah.
And they all play baseball.
Yeah.
So then they start like a night league where they can only play baseball at night. And everyone's like confused because on the one hand, these Ashen figures are super good at baseball. But on the other hand, it's like 10 o'clock at night and I have work tomorrow.
Or there's like some really comedy moments where they go to these really extreme lengths to like cover up. So they're like,
Sure.
He's like, oh, it's so hot. Take your top off. No, I don't feel like it.
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
Do you need an umbrella?
Why are you wearing that little weird umbrella hat? You know, like
cool.
the coloured
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, so Robert Pattinson, sorry, what's his name again?
Did you say Rubber Patterson?
Robert Pattinson and his rubber stamps are all around the city bouncing around. Robert Pattinson. So smooth, cool, sexy vampire guy has to then convince everybody that umbrella hats are cool.
Yeah.
You know, which he could do.
He
right?
could do. I'd wear it if he wore them.
If he was wearing it, right? If what is his name again? Jacob? All right. If Jacob was wearing like one of those propeller hats, you know, he would make it. It's a bit like Harry Styles. You know how Harry Styles can make anything look cool?
I do.
Clothing wise, you know? This guy would be the same. And that would be fun. What if he becomes so influential in trying to convince people that wearing like umbrella hats and big overcoats is a fashion thing, that he becomes a fashion model, and then everybody starts dressing like him, and then everyone looks like vampires. So then in the whole world, all of a sudden vampires can just walk amongst us because everybody looks like a vampire. And that could feed into the whole thing about, you know, don't tell people you're a vampire because you do, the vampire police come and kill you, you know?
Yeah. There's also, me and my friend Louise had this long-term running joke. I say had, we still have it. In the book, she describes Edward's skin a lot as marble, like marble.
Oh.
Sort of, you know, she also says about like him being cold, and then just a lot of talking about wet and stuff, and cold, wet. So we always used to pretend to try and shake each other's hand, but like it slip, because we're like, oh, your hand's like slippery marble, because we just thought it'd be really funny if she was like, you know, oh, your skin is slippery like marble, and then she just like goes.
Great, that's great. But my friend Jesse back in America, he does this thing. We used to do this thing wherever we'd always shake each other's hand for some reason, and we go, "Here's 5 good ones for you," referring to the fingers.
I like that. That's good.
Hey, give me 5 good ones. Here's 5 good ones. Oh, and then you know that thing where you can clasp the handshake with your other hand. 10 good ones.
Yeah.
That's
10 good ones.
Yeah, it's 10 good ones.
10 slippery good marble ones.
10 slippery old good ones.
So there's some comedy potential there. He's trying to hide from the sun, but he's kind of not doing a great job. He's very slippery. He tries to go in the pool, but he slips over because his skin's marble.
He then has to tell everybody that it's just makeup, glittery, fantastic makeup.
Or no, maybe he tries to cover it with makeup, so he gets some proper stage. Have you seen Death Becomes Her?
Yes.
You know, at the end where they're like caked in it because they're trying to pretend to still be alive. It's like that. He's just absolutely caked.
Exactly. And, you know, maybe.
And he's like put like stickers all over his face, like, look, Bella.
But I think you got something there, and maybe he's been working for a century on this type of makeup. It finally cracks it, that covers up his face, makes you look sexy, and also you can't see the sparkly bits in the sunshine. Then he starts a whole thing where it's makeup for vampires, by vampires, for vampires, and somehow regular humans find out and it becomes a sensation. He becomes like the CEO of Sephora.
It's like Hercules, you know. 0 to hero, no time flat. 0 to hero, just like that. And everyone's buying the merch.
Yep, exactly. I actually literally just watched that movie for the first time a couple of weeks ago.
Oh my God, no way. Did you love it?
I didn't like it.
No.
I thought it was
okay. No, we can't talk. We can't talk about this now. But I'm very sad. We can't talk about this now.
Right. Long story short, the twist of this movie is we add a little bit of comedy. We dial up the fact that if you get in the sun, you die. And I really like the idea of Jacob becoming quite a successful retailer, because the thing is, he's over 100. Edward. I don't care about Jacob. He's a dirty stinker wolf.
Normally,
right?
I wouldn't correct you, but it's very important that you don't mix these two up.
Thank you. Yeah, I know there's teams involved, right? There's teams. I don't want to cross the streams. But I want him to have developed more in his 107, 8 years or whatever on Earth. And I just...
A makeup mogul, yeah.
And I want him to be successful, okay? Because the thing is, you know the thing about rich people and the thing about successful moguls?
They're all secretly vampires.
They're all secretly vampires, exactly. And it doesn't matter how old they are, because you could just be like, yeah, I got a lot of plastic surgery. Yeah, I got even more because I'm super awesome and I own all this. Nobody would be like, you know, the CEO of vampire makeup, he looks weirdly young. Of course he does. He's a successful millionaire who makes makeup.
There is a story that I'm thinking of, but I can't remember what it is. So listeners, if you know what I'm talking about, please write in. There is a story where it's a famous guy and then he's he's the thing, and then it's his son, something junior, and then junior,
Right.
junior, and then thingy
great.
third, fourth, fifth. But it's all the same guy.
It's all the
'cause
same
he's a
guy.
vampire. Yeah.
That's great.
So kind of like that. It's like this company was set up by my great grandfather.
Grandfather. Yeah. We have strong bloodline. So that our, we just look the same. Look at our family lineage, and it's just like all these family portraits in this exact same picture.
Yeah.
That's very good. Tell me, explain, try to look.
Wow, the
just
family
keep,
resemblance is really
shocking,
strong,
right?
And then he just goes, yeah, inbreeding.
And then he has a kid, and the kid looks nothing like him. And then
he just brings this baby. This is my son. You'll meet him in 20 years. Here he is. Look, definitely real. Here, holds up just like a random baby. Goes,
right,
there we go.
Right.
But you won't meet him for a while. You'll see him when he's an adult. And I'll be dead then.
And I'll be dead because, that's what happens to me and to people in life because the death is part of this.
Yeah.
Oh, is that the sun? Hang on, where's my umbrella?
And then she accidentally walks into a room and it's a photo studio with like a bunch of different hats, and she realizes that they're all the same photo taken at the same time, but he's wearing a different hat. Yep.
That's that.
There's loads of comedy potential with, I think, like food as well. Like him, she's like, instead of her being like, you don't eat, that's weird, I think you're a vampire, she's like, why don't you eat anything? And she keeps like trying to get him, like, I'm really worried about you, like, and then maybe she gets suspicious. She like takes him to a theme park and she's like, would you like some candy floss? No. What about a toffee apple? No. Popcorn? Okay, what's wrong? Okay, what's wrong with? Come on.
Yeah.
Oh, how about this? It's the same movie, but she's just totally unaware that he's a vampire.
No idea. She
just doesn't figure it out.
And he keeps going.
And eventually
he's
come on, like,
right.
It's like, wow, I really wish that I could have a sleepover with you, but I don't sleep. And she's like, oh, okay. And she's just like really accepting and not curious.
Yeah, exactly. This is my bed. Looks a little bit like a coffin, you know what I mean?
And he's like, and she's like, you want to go out for steak? And he's like, whoa, did you say wooden steak? No, I just said steak. Oh, because that would be a big problem for me. Wink.
Oh, that's very
She's
good.
like, okay, cool. Yeah, sure, no worries. Hey, I'm going to make some Italian pasta tonight. Is that okay with you? What are you putting in the pasta? Oh, just, probably like some oregano, some basil, some
maybe a little garlic.
maybe a bit of garlic. Whoa, no. Whoa. Can't have that. Very allergic.
Hey, Bella, why don't you think I don't like garlic, huh? Because silly, your breath will smell bad.
Is it allergic? No, I'm not allergic. I just can't have it. Okay. Fine. Any questions you have about that? Why I don't have garlic?
My great uncle Vlad is coming in from Transylvania. Hint. I'm a
I haven't
vampire.
washed these socks in 50 years. Let me tell you about my memories from the Great War.
I can fly and I suck blood.
Is that a silver bullet?
Do you want another van to almost crash into you so I can stop it with my incredible strength? And then she goes, I get it. You're the Hulk. You're the Hulk.
And he's
You're
like,
the Hulk, man. Close enough.
If you know what? Fine. I'm the Hulk. Yep, sure.
Yep. I'm a skinny,
for God's
sexy,
sake,
ashen Hulk.
And he's like, come on, say what I am. Say it. Anemic? No! Come on! You know this. You look at the skin. Cold. It's very cold. And I'm very pale. And my eyes. Look at the eyes. Look at the eyes, Bella. You got contacts? No.
And
no.
What would be great? Yeah, exactly. And what would be great is if Bella is in every other way a total genius in this movie. Like she's literally
she meets Jacob one time and she's like, that guy's pretty weird. Do you think he's a werewolf? And he's like, come on,
a real werewolf vibe from him. Yeah.
What? You get the werewolf guy? You got the werewolf guy on one thing?
Yeah. And like her dad's a mummy or something, and she hasn't figured that out either. That'd be great.
Her dad's a mummy. Her daddy's a mummy.
Her daddy's a mummy, and and her mummy is a ghoul, like a goblin or something. I don't know. I can't remember all the other monsters.
A witch?
Yeah.
All
right, nice. Yeah. Come on, Hollywood, make that.
Yeah.
Not another Twilight movie. you know?
Yeah. Wow, I feel exhausted.
Wow. You need to take a sip of the nectar of the gods. You know, blood. Maybe some blood. You might just be a
I believe they call it the forbidden milkshake.
Try, and it's delicious. Right, so I guess the ultimate question, Emma, is how would you rate this movie on a scale of 1 to 5 foods?
Red apples would be a good one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I guess the only last question to answer here, Emma, is on a scale of 1 to 5 delicious red apples cupped into ashen hands. How many apples would you give this movie?
So this is
5.
the 4 for me. This is a 4,
Oh,
okay?
Okay.
And I know obviously I've spoken a lot about it very passionately. However, I am also aware of all of its flaws. I know I haven't gone into much detail about them. So it's not a perfect movie. We have got some 5s coming up soon, so don't worry.
Right,
Hold on to
okay.
your
Hold on to
your butts. But yeah, this is a 4 for me. This is a 4. How about you?
I don't like a 2. It's a 2. I'm sorry. It's a 2. You know. But I will say you've sold me on the whole importance of it a lot more, and I really I love the story of it. But in itself, isolation, this movie, that's a 2 for me.
I'll be very interested to see if we do get around to watching the rest of them, how that influences your score. I think that's what we should do. Is we should have a day where we just binge all of them and then just rate the first one again, and we'll see if that score's changed.
All right. I don't have to watch the first one again, though, do I?
Why would you not? I mean, why wouldn't you want to? Yeah, no, you don't. These are fine. We go. The next 4 are all very much their own thing. This one is a separate one because this is the one that was made before they had money. And then the next ones they did have money, and that's very
I just,
important.
if you told me like, hey, cool, that was a really good one, but let's watch all of them so you have to start over again. I'm not a big fan of starting over, I don't go backwards. I only move forward. I'm like a shark. They don't have necks. They can't turn around.
And you have 2 rows of teeth.
Yeah, and if I lose one, you can make a cool necklace out of it and show your friends.
Can I?
Yeah, shark tooth. You've never had a shark tooth necklace?
No, I know what they are. That's very 90s though. We're not in the 90s anymore. You'd have a like a I don't know what 2000s, like a choker probably is too.
Yeah, like a puka shell necklace or something, And maybe like a shark tooth necklace, shark tooth earrings, a bracelet that makes it look like a shark head.
No. A vampire tooth necklace. Yeah.
Hey, by the way, when the vampires in this movie were biting people, did they even have fangs?
No, they don't have fangs. They just have normal teeth.
That's another thing that's weird about this movie. They're not vampires, okay? Whatever they are, they're not vampires. They don't have teeth
They're
that are
just
sharp.
hot.
Yeah, but lots of people are hot without being vampires. This is a different species, okay? Which I'm fine with. I'm open to new things. But I would like to have a long conversation with the author of this and the other books to say, look, I get it. I know people liked it. I know it's fun. I know it started a revolution. I'm sorry that people made fun of it on the internet. But let me just give you a couple pointers.
And that somebody then wrote 50 Shades of Grey based on this.
As fan fiction. Yeah, true. Just change all the vampires to just regular men. I just think they should have sharp teeth. They should die in the sun. And, garlic, steaks, coffins. Call me old-fashioned, but I like my vampires in the traditional sense.
You know what film you'd really love?
When Harry Met Sally.
Dracula, just the original Dracula.
Dracula. Yeah, but does it have like cool stuff and like skateboards and trick jumps and stuff?
It has a guy in a cape.
All right, cool. Does he like? Is it like he goes out in a very like cool, awesome, colorful cape just to shock people?
Yeah, why not? Sure. Yeah,
fantastic. Sign me up. What's it called? Dracula.
Dracula.
Bram
Stoker's Dracula.
All right, I'll put it on.
And do you know what else they did not have very much of in this movie?
This talking like this from Transylvania.
No, bats.
Oh, yeah.
No bats in this one.
Yeah, that's another thing. There was no bats or no coffins. It was like they were just making this up as they went along, which is very, very unhelpful for me. Sorry for the accent. Well, anyway, if you'd like to hear more of our amazing oeuvre of accents and acting abilities, please tell your friends, and thank you for listening to this episode of Plot Twister.
Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts.
And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Look at the skin. Cold. It's very cold.